The NFL just banned this. For years, it's been hiding in plain sight. On the sidelines, in the biggest moments of the game, a quick snap, a sharp inhale, eyes wide, heads shaking, bodies jolting back to life, smelling salts. The secret ritual players never talked about them, but everyone saw. And now, suddenly, the league says it's over, banned, gone. But if this is what they're willing to ban on camera, what about the things you never saw? What about the drugs that didn't make it to TV highlights? The ones that didn't leave a puff of smoke, but left scars that never healed? Because this story isn't just about smelling salts. It's about something much bigger, much darker, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. On NFL sidelines, it was a ritual. A player grabbed a capsule, snap, inhale, eyes widened, helmet slammed, players jolted to life. It looked harmless, funny even, but in 2025, the league intervened, not by banning the players, but by banning teams from supplying smelling salts. San Francisco's George Kittle summed it up best when he joked, "I've been distraught all day." The issue wasn't safety perception, it was optics. Players can still use their own salts, but the sight of teams handing them out, that's gone. Smelling salts were the addiction fans could see. If the NFL banned that so fast, what do you think they're hiding that you can't see? Smelling salts were the drug fans could see, a ritual out in the open, but they were just the smokescreen because the real drug of choice, that was hidden in the locker room. Pre-game, Sunday afternoons, every week across the NFL, there was another ritual. 50 men, silent, waiting in line, shorts rolled up, one by one, a needle to the thigh. It wasn't steroids, it wasn't some illegal injection smuggled in, it was something the league itself approved, a drug called Toradol. Doctors called it safe, teams called it routine, but players called it survival. Toradol doesn't heal you, it doesn't make you stronger, it just erases pain. Fast, so fast that you could barely feel the hits, until the next morning. Former running back Calvin Hill remembered it clearly. We weren't told the risks, we were told to get in line. And so they did, week after week, shot after shot, line after line. The risks, internal bleeding, kidney failure, ulcers that shredded stomach linings. But the NFL didn't care about risk, they cared about the show. Because for fans at home, a player limping off, and then returning just minutes later, looked like toughness. Behind the curtain, it was chemistry. And when some players finally pushed back, they sued. Dozens of ex-players walked into courtrooms. Headlines accused the league of running Toradol like an assembly line. The testimony sounded less like football and more like a pharmaceutical factory. And how did the NFL respond? With silence. Because Toradol was never about safety. It was about keeping the illusion alive. The illusion that NFL players were unbreakable. So why didn't players speak up? Why didn't anyone blow the whistle sooner? Because in the NFL, silence was the rule. Team doctors weren't just healers, they were gatekeepers. The same man who stuck you with the needle was the one who decided if you played. Complain? And suddenly you were soft. Not a team guy. The kind of label that could cost you millions and end your career overnight. Coaches preached toughness. Front offices demanded availability. And the message was clear. Play through pain or be replaced. One former linebacker described it like this. They didn't say shut up and take it. They just made sure you knew there was a line of guys waiting for your job. So players stayed quiet. They lined up for the shots. They swallowed the pills. They learned the unspoken code. Sacrifice your body or sacrifice your career. And the league? They called it culture. They called it toughness. But toughness wasn't the truth. The truth was silence. Silence enforced by fear. And fear enforced by the system. It wasn't about keeping players safe. It was about keeping players quiet. Smelling salts were just the tip. Toradol was just the needle, but together, they were only part of something bigger. Because inside the NFL, the locker room was a pharmacy. There were pills for pain, pills to sleep, pills to wake up, and pills to get through Sunday. One former player described the trainer's table like a candy shop, little bowls, different colors, no warning labels, just take what you need. And players did, because if they didn't, they couldn't play. Opioids like Vicodin, stimulants like Adderall, anti-inflammatories handed out like Tic Tacs. And when the pills weren't enough, there were injections, cortisone shots straight into knees, shoulders, ribs, instant relief, at the cost of long-term damage no one wanted to talk about. Years later, players described waking up in cold sweats, addicted, shaking, dependent on drugs that were first handed to them by team doctors. The NFL denied responsibility, but court records tell a different story. In 2017, a lawsuit revealed that NFL teams had distributed over 10,000 doses of opioids in a single season. 10,000. And that wasn't an accident. That was the system. Because in the NFL, the body wasn't sacred, it was disposable. And the pharmacy was always open. The pills worked, the shots worked, until they didn't, because after the final whistle, the pain didn't stop. Take Keith McCants, once a first round star, aftermath of his career left him battling pain and addiction. In 2021, he died alone in a hotel room. The authorities called it a drug overdose. It was the struggle of a body that never got to heal. He wasn't alone. Over 1,800 former players filed lawsuits against the league, claiming teams handed out painkillers so freely it felt more like public distribution than medical treatment. A staggering 52% said they used prescriptions during their careers, and 71% admitted they misused them. One ex-lineman put it plainly, "We weren't people, we were assets, and once the asset broke, they moved on." Broken knees, ruined backs, bodies that couldn't play, but worse, bodies that couldn't even sleep without tremors. And the system still denied responsibility, still called it care, still insisted players were treated fairly, but the evidence was in the court filings, and the stories were in the streets, because while the game moves on, many players couldn't. The lawsuits told one story, but the NFL told another. Over and over, league officials denied responsibility. They insisted doctors followed protocol, that everything was within guidelines. But behind closed doors, the truth leaked out. Court filings showed team doctors admitting to handing out painkillers without proper prescriptions. Emails revealed executives knew about the volume of drugs being distributed and chose silence. In 2017, a federal judge ruled that NFL teams had, in fact, violated federal drug laws, yet the league never admitted fault. They called it a misinterpretation, a paperwork issue. One former player said it best, "If they admit it, the lawsuits never stop." So instead, they deny it and wait for us to disappear. In a way, it worked. For every headline about concussions, the drug scandal barely made the news cycle, because silence protects the shield, and the shield protects the money. This was never about medicine, it was about business. Every Sunday, the NFL prints money, billions in TV deals, sponsorships, betting partnerships, and the machine only works if the stars are on the field. That's why drugs weren't just allowed, they were encouraged, weaponized, smelling salts on the sideline, Toradol in the locker room, opioids on the trainer's table. None of it was about healing, it was about availability, because in the NFL, that's the only thing that matters, not whether you're healthy, not whether you'll walk in 10 years, but whether you can suit up this Sunday. One former player put it bluntly, "They didn't care if we were healthy, they cared if we were ready." That was the trade. Give your body now, lose it later. And the league packaged it as toughness. They branded it as warrior culture. They sold it to fans as the cost of glory. But glory fades, and toughness breaks, and when the lights shut off, the league doesn't stop. It just finds the next body. The NFL called it toughness, but really, it was dependency. And here's the part nobody wants to admit. The cycle isn't over. Today, the drugs have different names, different packaging, different optics, recovery IVs, anti-inflammatory cocktails, sleep aids, performance supplements with labels just vague enough to pass inspection. It's the same playbook dressed up for a new generation, because the league doesn't care what you take, as long as you can play. And the risks, they'll deal with those later, or not at all. So where does it end? How many players wake up in their 30s with the bodies of old men? How many more headlines about lawsuits, overdoses, and shattered lives? Before anyone admits what's really happening, the truth is simple. The drugs change, the players change, but the system doesn't. And as long as the machine prints billions, the cycle never ends. The NFL's problem was never just the drugs, it was the silence. Silence that protects the shield, and a shield that protects the money, but silence never lasts, and denial always comes with a price. If you're still here, you already understand. This isn't only about football, it's about power, control, and what gets buried to keep the game alive. The truth is simple, the drugs change, the players change, but the system doesn't, and as long as the machine prints billions, the cycle never ends.